In lesson 2 of the 15 lessons we have in this course, we're going to be discussing how to configure Active Directory in more complex environments. Up to this point, we've looked at creating a single forest with one or two domains into it, as well as discussing briefly child domains, but now we're going to expand on that and begin by talking about configuring multiple domains in a multi-forest infrastructure. Previously, we talked about a single forest that has multiple domains in it. Now, we've changed that up a little bit now. We have forest 1, which contains domain A, and forest 2, which contains domain B. We still have our domain trees. We still have our forest root domains. We still have the subdomains that have the parent-child relationship. We still have the containers, including the OUs. All that good stuff is the same. But we have two separate forests now, and if we want these two forests to talk to each other, we need to create what's called a trust. I don't need to create a trust between the domains within each forest. I just need to create a trust between the two forests, and this will allow us to share the resources with the appropriate permissions to users in the other forests. When adding another forest and domains within that forest, there's not much difference between what we already did previously. We're going to sign in to our server as a local administrator. We're going to create the new forest using the same steps that we used initially. And then after we've created that second forest and we want it to be able to communicate with that first forest, we're going to need to establish that trust relationship. When we want to add domains to our new forest, we now sign in as an enterprise admin because we're working at the domain level, not just at the server level. And then we're going to add our new domain controller using our deployment wizard. Specifically, we're going to choose to add a new domain controller in a new domain. We'll do so for the child domain, which is going to really just be a subdomain as we saw previously, and then for the tree domain, which creates a new tree in the same forest. And this is going to be really helpful if you want to create multiple DNS domain names. Maybe in addition to azmtp.pearson.com, I used to live in Colorado Springs, I want co.mtp.pearson.com. I would do so by creating a new tree domain. Now, I've been mentioning trust. We have a couple different types of trust. We have automatic trust and we have manual trust. And a trust is simply a security agreement between two domains in a forest, between two forests, or between a forest and an external security realm. Now, there are a couple different types of trust. We have automatic trust, which are created for us, and they are two-way transitive trust. And then we have manual trust. Now, an automatic trust is what we use when we add a child domain. It automatically creates a parent-child two-way transitive trust. And transitive trust just means if domain A trusts domain B, and then domain B trusts domain C, let's say we had a third tier down here, then automatically domain A is going to trust domain C. So these are automatic trusts created between parent domains and child domains. We also have tree root two-way transitive trust, which is a trust between two different domains in that forest. As you can see, the automatic trusts are very easy to create because we don't have to do anything. We just walk through the steps to create the domains, and the trusts are created for us. But we do need to create manual trusts, and we have 4 different types of manual trusts. Our first being a forest manual trust. We just introduced that where we have 2 different forests. We can create a one-way or two-way transitive trust between those 2 forests. One way allows users in one forest to access resources in the other forest, but those users in that first forest won't be able to access the resources in the second forest. So a two-way allows users in both forests to access resources in both forests. External trust, again, one-way or two-way, but these are non-transitive trusts between a forest and an older style domain like NT40. This also allows users in both the local forest and the remote forest to access those resources. We have a realm trust, which is a one-way or two-way transitive or non-transitive trust, the most flexible of all 4, enabling authentication between your AD forest and a Kerberos v5 realm, but this is based on a non-Windows directory service. And the last one is a shortcut trust. This is also a one-way or two-way non-transitive trust between domains. This is typically in a single forest, and this is typically used to improve authentication performance, which are typically created in the same forest, but between 2 different domain trees. So we've established our trust between 2 forests or 2 domains, whatever we've chosen to do. And now we are concerned a little bit about my users from both of these domains or both forests have potential access to all of those resources in that remote forest or domain. This could pose a security threat. So what we're going to do is look at 2 options for mitigating that risk. One is called SID filtering, And this is where we're going to use SIDs of groups that the user belongs to, and those SIDs are going to be checked by remote domains to see if they've been filtered to prohibit them from accessing that domain. And one other area to look at are your domain admins, because by default they could have too much access in that remote domain. So you'll want to ensure you use SID filtering to limit what access they have in that remote domain. And a second way to mitigate security risk are called authentication scopes. And we have two of those. We have forest or domain-wide scopes, where everyone in that remote forest or domain are considered a member of the authenticated users group, so we can control access to resources using that authenticated users group. That's easier for you to manage, but also limits your control. So you may want to choose selective authentication. This is where I have to explicitly grant each user permissions to even authenticate against the server resources in your local forest or domain. This provides a lot more control for you, but also there's a lot more time involved in configuring a selective authentication than a forest-wide or domain-wide authentication. And the good news is you can reconfigure the forest or external authentication scope settings after you've created that trust using the Active Directory Domains and Trust tool. In fact, let's step out and explore what we can do with trust using AD Domains and Trusts. So we're back into our image. Remember, we have one forest and we have one domain with two different domain controllers in there. So we don't have anything fancy set up. But I'm going to show you how to at least get to the tools and walk you through a realm trust. So let's go ahead and go to Active Directory Domains and Trusts. Let me slide this down so it's a little bit more under the window here. Then I'm going to right-click on the AZMTP Pearson.com and click Properties. And we have the Trust tab. And this first box lists the outgoing trust, and the bottom box lists the incoming trust. There's none established at this point. We're going to click New Trust. And it kicks off a wizard. We'll go ahead and click Next. And it's going to ask me for a name. Well, I'm just going to use our Pearson.com name. So I'm going to go ahead and do Next. And you'll see we have the option for a realm trust or a trust with a Windows domain. So we don't have all of the options here because of the configuration that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next here, at least to walk you through some of the screens. And you can see it's asking the transitivity. It's a cool word. Is it non-transitive or transitive? So I'm going to leave it with non-transitive. We'll click Next. And you'll see the direction of trust is two-way, one-way incoming, or one-way outgoing. This is how we can establish how we want to share our resources. Maybe we have resources in one domain that we want to share with our users, so that would be a one-way versus a two-way trust. I'll go ahead and click Next on this. It's going to ask me for the trust password. Then we'll click Next. It's giving me a summary screen. This domain AZMTP through another domain called Pearson.com. I just went with a higher level domain. It's a two-way directional. It's a realm. It's not transitive, and it's created for this domain only. I'm not even going to complete this because there is no Pearson.com that I've actually created where I have a DC running. But I wanted to show you what tool you use and the steps and the screens that you'll see as you go through this tool. Now, one of the things that you need to do, though, is you need to make sure you have the correct DNS record, because all this communication when we're establishing a trust is done through DNS records, specifically SRB records for our remote communications. So we have to make sure those records exist, and that's why I can't show you a forest trust or an external trust, because we don't have the appropriate DNS records in this particular configuration. So we have two types of trust, automatic and manual, transitive and non-transitive, two-way and one-way. We have different types of trust, the forest, the external, the realm, and the shortcut. And the tool we use to manage these trusts is the Active Directory Domains and Trust tool.